you a spoiler here, which is the culture and recreation category has about 7% in your budget. That matches exactly with the actual San Francisco city budget, so that was pretty crazy. Another one, you put in 20%, so about 1/5 of our budget in public works, exactly 1/3 into human welfare down there. Your biggest category, oh no, tied, 1/3 again to community health, and then in public protection you have 7%, so even with culture and recreation. And I think it's worth acknowledging before we move on to the next one is that we're going to show you now the actual San Francisco city budget, and we're going to see how it changes. Dun, dun, dun.
Whoa.
So you did nail it on culture and recreation. However, community health is now down by 2/3. So you would prefer that San Francisco invest almost double what it currently does in community health. For human welfare, again, you'd want about 1/3 more into our social safety net. We do fund transit a little bit more, thankfully, than what you guys did. So that's good. But of course, even though, and it's always helpful to have an exercise where people do put funding into public protection, because no matter where we do this, all over the city and with what kind of crowd we do it with, nobody will ever put in enough money to match the actual San Francisco city budget for public protection. Yeah.
Does this budget fund include debt service on bonds we've already approved?
Wow, that's a great question, and yes, that would be an administration. Yeah, so maybe you didn't account for, does it include debt financing in this budget? And yes, that's in our public works and administration budget.
For public protection, in comparison, how much does the fire department get compared to the police department, sheriff's department, and DA's?
Yeah, absolutely, and that's a really good point to notice. So we use these categories as well, it's worth noting. These are the actual city budget categories, and part of our exercise here is to demonstrate how silly and misleading these categories are, because public protection, it sounds nice and all, it's police and fire. It is really not, because almost $1 billion of that is for the SFPD. Likewise, about $700 million is for our jail system. $700 million is for fire, but then you go right back to the DA, who has about $400 million. So overall, fire makes up, I don't know how much, maybe like 20% of the public protection budget. So the rest of that is police.
Is public defender money also part of that budget?
Yeah, it is also in there. Yeah, it gets about 120 million. So about 1/10 of the SFPD budget and 1/4 of the DA.
I know some of the departments, they are called enterprise departments, where they actually raise money through services, like community gets fairs and the public works gets, for licenses, they get money. So are those monies part of this budget, or are they do kind of separate?
I feel like that was like a plant question. That was so good. I don't know how you know that. Because yes, none of the enterprise money is included here at all, which is to say Muni has a lot more money than this and what's represented here in this pie, because we discount all of the state and federal money for Muni, not in this budget, because this is only the dollars in San Francisco that we can control. So this is the general fund budget. So none of the enterprise departments, including fees or state grants or federal grants, are in there. This is 100% money that the mayor can allocate however he wants. Yeah.
I guess it's kind of a follow-up question, but it does include, for example, like SFMTA ticketing. That is a way that they raise revenue. I'm sorry, maybe I'm curious. I'm always curious.
I think it would not be in the general fund budget. When you have a fee, you have to justify, or even a fine, you have to justify what you're using it for. And so likely it would be an enterprise thing as well. And it's almost nothing. It's worth noting as well. All right, so that is the actual city budget. I'll do that comparison one more time for you so that you see just how stark that is. And then we're going to talk a little bit about the budget cuts. So as Natalie shared, it is true that $100 million is going to be increased to the SFPD, to the Sheriff's Department, and to the District Attorney. So those departments are all getting increases in this budget. And actually, I'll go back for a second to remind you about that 20% that we need to cut from our budget in the next 5 years. You're starting to see, like, there is one place we could take 20% from, but there's also one place that they have said no cuts will happen, and that's to public protection. They will not get any cuts this year, and they will not get any cuts for the foreseeable future of the Lurie administration as well.
And how much does the 20% equal about? How much money?
Oh, of money, it's the deficit that we have, so it's 1.5 billion that we need to cut from our budget if we don't raise
that
revenue.
was in 5 years. We need 1.5 billion this year, right?
No, in 5 years, but then it's annual. So in 5 years, it's 1.5 billion annually.
So 5 into 1.
Yeah, exactly.
100 million.
Yeah, and what their genuine plan is at the moment is to cut 20% from the other categories and not take a single percentage from the public protection. So what we're talking about is groundbreaking. Like, it would destroy the San Francisco city government, which is why we're pleading with the administration to get serious about the budget, and getting serious looks like looking at other solutions to this funding crisis. Some of you seem to be really in the weeds on the budget, and so if you are, this is our budget cut tracking. People's Budget Coalition is the only people who bother to track the impact of budget cuts. The city doesn't do this. Reporters all rely on our information anyway, so if you see any budget cut information, it's because they got it from us in the end. We keep this current and up to date, and we will until the bitter end. So we will be there on City Hall, June 25th. We will be there until the wee hours of the morning, and we will keep it updated the whole time for you so that you know, and you can wake up and learn what was saved in the budget, and hopefully it was a lot of these things, but we keep this explained. You can see the impact by community. We do an equity impact as well. It is worth pointing out before we move into the other budget cut sections here is that I really want to point out the Filipino community and the Pacific Islander community, because these seem like kind of small amounts. It's just 900 people who would be impacted by cuts to Pacific Islander communities. That represents 20% of all of the funding in San Francisco for Pacific Islanders that is being cut just this year. So already 1/5 of the community organizations for Pacific Islanders is going to close on July 1st if these cuts go through. Likewise, that's 20% of funding for Filipino organizations. That's thousands of layoffs for the community. And then not listed here, 20% of all transgender organizations are also getting cut. So we're gonna see disproportionate impact. So you might want to assume, I think, that San Francisco is gonna balance its budget. If we have to make painful cuts, at least it'll be equitable. It'll still hurt, but hopefully it won't hurt the most vulnerable. It is the opposite. The opposite is exactly true here in San Francisco. And so we're gonna hear from some speakers now, and I'll stop yapping as well in just a second, because I do want to talk about what's at stake for the West Side. So this is a district and a couple of districts and neighborhoods who see almost something of a service desert when we come to the number of city offices out here, the number of clinics, the number of community-based organizations. There's only a few. It's not as crowded maybe as it is in the Tenderloin, but what that means is if there's a single cut to any of these, that whole region is gone. So you have one option on the West Side for legal services, and that is getting cut this year. So for general legal services, that will be gone at the end of this. There's one really core senior program that operates out here that will also be gone on July 1st. So this is senior community living campaign. Yeah, you might have seen it. They're really lovely as well.
I work for Community Living Campaign.
Oh, really? Oh.
I do tech support for them.
Oh,
To train
dear.
seniors
They're
in tech.
fighting so hard against their
we're-
cuts. Yeah, absolutely. That is so awful. It is, you might think that the West Side is one of these areas that won't get super impacted by budget cuts, and it's just not the case at all.
Okay, so you talked about it. Can you also talk